Well, everyone, the iPhone 7 has been out for so many years now, so let's go and see if this phone is still even kind of worth buying in 2024. Now, I will tell you, if you want to pick up some phones I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPhone 7, you can see that this particular device basically on the outside has that 4.7-inch display. Now, this is a good display. I've always felt like this was a very solid display when it first came out, but as of right now, it is not that good of a display, and that's just kind of what's happening when you're getting a device like this. You are getting a fairly outdated panel with an outdated display and an outdated body, and that's just kind of what's going on here. So I think everyone would kind of know that, but to kind of make you feel better if you own a device like this, I guess one way to kind of look at it is that with a device like the iPhone 7, you are kind of getting a device that, still has the same type of display as something like the iPhone, SE 3. So if you really want to kind of think about it, I guess you have that type of ability of kind of thinking about it from that standpoint. But it is what it is. I guess there's nobody really going to be looking at this particular device and wanting it from that particular perspective. So from that side, that kind of covers it up from the front. Now you are still getting this type of device from another perspective too, because you have a lot of bezel on the top and bottom. So there's definitely a lot of bezel going on with this particular device, and that's just another one of those things that kind of happens when you go and get this type of device, is that you are getting a device that basically does have quite a bit of bezel at the top and bottom. You're still getting that front-facing camera, which is good, and Touch ID 2 on the front, which is probably good for some people. Now on the bottom, you're getting that Lightning port, so no USB-C on this iPhone, but Lightning is still perfectly fine. I think everyone kind of knows what's going on when you are getting an iPhone with a Lightning port. Still have lots of accessories supported on this thing, so it's not really like a terrible device here from like that perspective either. Now on the back side, this is where things get a little bit interesting. So with this particular phone, there's not really anything insane going on that we haven't already seen before. So we're getting this standard, basically like aluminum back. So the back of this phone, like I said, there isn't really anything insane going on. It's like the standard, back. This was before we had that glass back though. So this was the generation right before that. And it would have been really good if we had like a glass back on this thing. Unfortunately, we don't. So there's not much we can do about it like from that perspective either. Now we are getting that single, camera setup on the back too. So it's a single camera, that's kind of what it is. And then that's it. No wireless charging, you're getting IP certification, which is great, but no wireless charging or anything like that. And that's kind of what's happening when you're getting a device like this, as well. So from that perspective, that kind of covers it up on the outside as well. Now, moving on to basically the camera side of things, this particular phone has that single 12 megapixel camera on the back, and it also has that other, 7 megapixel camera on the front. Now, I would tell you this is a good camera, right? This is not a terrible camera. I think the 7 Plus was a much bigger upgrade, but the iPhone 7 for what you're paying for, it's totally understandable. You're basically getting a device that is still it's an older camera. So I have to preface this whole thing by saying this phone came out in 2016. So this is a phone that came out so long ago that, for an old phone, it's not bad. It's not a bad camera, but for a brand new device like this thing, even compared against something like an iPhone 11, is not going to be that great of a camera. That's just the way these things work. And that's just kind of what's happening when you are getting a device like this. You're going to be getting a device that is, a fairly outdated camera. And I wouldn't recommend this one to people if they actually want to go and buy a phone and actually use it on an everyday basis from that camera perspective. So keep that in mind. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but just one of those tiny things to keep in mind there. So if you're using applications like Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or whatever other case, you're probably going to be okay. But like I said, if you want to take it up a notch, then you may want to go and buy something that maybe still be a little bit worth it. And I do feel like one of those other devices like, an iPhone, 11, iPhone 12 will definitely give you a better camera when it comes down to it. Now, the biggest thing that changed probably in the last couple of years, and probably the number one reason why I really wouldn't recommend buying this phone anymore, is probably due to the fact that this iPhone is no longer supported with software. So this iPhone pretty much no longer has iOS updates. It still is getting iOS security updates, but this iPhone is not getting any more security updates or any more software updates, as of right now, which is kind of a sad, and it's kind of a big thing going on with this particular device, because the last thing you probably want to do is get a phone that doesn't really have a future ahead of it. And that is precisely what's going on with this particular device. With the iPhone 7, it stopped on iOS 15. So, that's great, if you want to stick with an iPhone that's been unsupported for so many years. But that's what's going on when you're getting a device like this, is that it's already outdated. I don't want to recommend a phone to people that's already been outdated with software. And like I said, that's almost exactly what's going on with this particular phone. So to kind of give you a little bit of leeway, this phone is still getting security updates, so you can go ahead and pretty much still buy this phone and still get some security updates here and there. But you're going to be in a very tough situation if you buy a phone like this and, you're no longer getting iOS 17 features and iOS 18 features in the future as well. So take it as you will, but I personally would not recommend buying this phone anymore when you can go buy a phone like an iPhone 11 or iPhone, even like an iPhone XR that's still supported with software. The iPhone 7, I honestly would not recommend buying from that specific perspective either. Now from the performance side, this iPhone does basically have that Apple A10 Fusion chip inside of it, really the only Fusion chip they ever made, which was kind of surprising, with 2 gigabytes of RAM. Now this iPhone from a performance side really didn't bring anything to the table that the other iPhones already didn't really have. And what I mean by that is like with the iPhone 7, this device pretty much, what it came with was, kind of the same thing that the iPhone 6s came with, but it did bring some really good, quality of life improvements hardware wise, like especially with the 7 Plus. But with the iPhone 7, you're basically stuck in this weird phase where this particular phone is still, a decent performing phone, but it doesn't really have the it factor. It doesn't really have anything that the other iPhones already didn't have before, to be honest. And then ever since this iPhone, all the iPhones have gotten significantly faster. So that might be another thing to keep in mind as well. So that's kind of another thing to keep in mind there too. So with something like the iPhone 7, I will tell you this phone, if you're playing like basic games or if you're using basic applications, I think this particular phone is probably good enough for the most part. And you'd be surprised how decent of a job this particular phone can actually do from a performance side for a 2016 device. But like I said, the problem with this phone as of right now is that this particular device, from a performance standpoint, really isn't going to be doing that well because 1, it's outdated with software, but 2, the fact that this phone is already pretty much stuck on its last leg from a performance side as well, especially with phones now that have like 8 gigabytes of RAM from iPhones and they have like, a lot better performance and a lot better chipsets. From that perspective too, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to even buy this phone anymore from that perspective either. So there's a lot of different things that are kind of going around, but that's kind of what I see from this particular device from that perspective, from what I can see as well. So take it as you will, but that kind of covers it up from the performance side. The battery life as well, is really not that great either. So that's just kind of one of those other things that I kind of keep in mind here too. It's really not that great of a performing battery life either. And like I said, I wouldn't really want to recommend a phone to people where the battery life really isn't doing that well. And this is another classic case of that basically going on. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I'd recommend telling you is that, in my opinion, the iPhone 7 I think is an interesting phone. I think when it first came out, it was interesting. I think now it still has a lot of capability and a lot of quality for being as old as it is. It brought some stuff to the table. But like I said, as of right now, I would not recommend buying this phone anymore. And that's mostly because this phone is fairly outdated and you're basically getting a phone now that's just unsupported with software, is not going to be getting any new features, and just really is kind of stuck in the past in a way. So take it as you will, but that's kind of how I see this particular phone in this day and age as of right now. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.